welcome to Answer Me 10, the podcast, with me, Barbara Dickson. Having been interviewed many times over the years, I'm always conscious of the generic nature of interviewing. And in my case, it usually begins with, "So Barbara, tell me, how did it all begin?" This has never exactly excited me, but I've always enjoyed reading those one-page affairs at the back of glossy magazines, which ask the same stereotypical questions to different people every week. Hugely diverse answers appear. So, I thought it would be fun to pose the same 10 questions to some other notable women in the world of music and see what different answers they would give. This is what Answer Me 10 with Barbara Dickson is all about. I hope you enjoy the journey with me. Today's guest is Charlie DORE. A songwriter of enormous integrity, Charlie's first love was the theatre. After drama school, where she met her long-time collaborator, Julian Littman, there followed work in regional rep, TV drama, and even a stint on the children's television show Rainbow before forming her own band and signing to Island Records in 1978. Her first album included the radio favourite Pilot of the Airwaves. The intervening years have seen her unusually diverse career continue to incorporate acting, comedy, writing for radio and composition for both film and TV. She's written songs for Tina Turner, George Harrison, Celine Dion, Paul Carrack and Jimmy Nail, who had a #1 hit with a song that Charlie co-wrote, Ain't No Doubt. Always continuing to record, a change of direction came in 2005 when she began to make more personally observational and introspective recordings with the release of her album Sleep All Day and Other Stories. Her most recent and critically acclaimed album is called Like Animals. This more recent work sees Charlie at her lyrical best. Question 1. Town or country?
Well, it used to be town, very definitely town, but now it's country. I mean, I'm not talking about, in the hinterlands out in the middle of nowhere, but since we moved away from London, when I go back to London, I think this was a good idea not to still stay here.
Do you think that's something to do with the fact that you're no longer in London and therefore the kind of pace of it bothers you? Or do you think that you really have got your roots firmly down in country life now?
I think so. I remember when we first moved out here, although we were lucky, we lived in North London and it was pretty leafy and nice and reasonably gentle considering it was London. But it was getting a little bit faster, a little bit more leery, I felt. And when we came out here, I remember going to the little post office for the first time. And it's since closed, of course, which is really sad.
Oh.
But anyway, so I was standing in the queue and there was a very old man in front of me. He was like a sort of, what's his name? Was it L.R. Hartley?
Yes. Or Walter Gabriel from The Archers was another one.
He was sort of kind of central casting, dear old man,
Yeah.
And he went, I was standing behind him in the queue and it was all very slow and everything. And the woman behind the counter said, "Oh, hello, Mr. Chisholm," or whatever his name was. And he said, "Oh, good morning." And she said, "What can I do for you?" And he said, "Just a humble second-class stamp, please." Just the one. And he said, "I only need one." I thought, oh, this is brilliant.
So the pace of life, really, I mean, that was that was his sort of sphere of reference, was just buying what he needed when he needed it. There was no external pressure other than just to do what he needed to do that day. That tells a lot, that story, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely, living in the moment. And another thing I really appreciate here, although we were lucky, we did have a nice garden in London, but here you can really hear the bird song, and I record it a lot. I've got countless recordings of blackbirds and thrushes and, everything that comes through the garden. And I've actually used it a lot. It's actually on leaf blowing, a whole choir of birds.
Yes, I've heard that because I love your music. That's so interesting. A lot of people are influenced by birds. I went with Sam Lee to the Nightingales event a couple of years ago. So I have sung with a nightingale. So I really understand that. I remember when you were in London, you had pets. So have you increased your pet capacity in the country, or have you got less in that department?
Sadly, very depleted in the pet department. We moved out with, a full complement. We moved out with Woody, our Irish Terrier, who was our first ever dog. Woody, and then the two brothers, Wilbur and Archie, who were our cats, and a fish which we'd inherited from my stepdaughter, Holly. And we used to call him Bilko because he used to kind of parade up and down his tank. Anyway, we all travelled out here, and it was almost too perfect, really. And so after about 3 months, Archie was run over by our next door neighbour, I think. Ex-next door neighbour, it's all right. And we didn't kill him. It's just that they've moved.
And that's what I was going to say. Now, what happened to the neighbour? Come on now, Miss Dorr.
Don't run over my pets. Well, I don't think we'll be dogless forever, but
But country life is where it's at for you.
Yes.
Question 2: meat or veg?
It's very definitely veg, and but I'm not evangelical about it. I think we probably should knock off the meat eating, actually. I mean, just environmentally, really. As well as it's nice to be able to walk past a cow and lean over the fence and go, I don't eat you. I don't eat you.
Have you always been a vegetarian? I can't remember that, you see, and I didn't know that you didn't eat meat. Isn't that interesting?
No, I wasn't always a vegetarian. So that's why I don't boss people around about it, But for a long, long time now, a really long time, I have to confess, I haven't quite come off fish yet, you see. And so I'm an amateur, really. Because Linda McCartney used to say you shouldn't eat anything with a face.
Or with anything with eyes, apart from potato, my friend Troy Donnelly says.
Yes, I'm going to progress to knocking fish off. I am sort of slowly doing it, actually.
Is this? Do I detect some guilt in there, Charlie?
Yes, because I mean, it's very easy to sort of say, well, a fish doesn't think, but actually, I mean, I'm sure they have, they have some kind of sentience. I mean, people would argue that to the end of the day, but. When you look at what's happened recently, the revelations about how some salmon are bred, it's horrifying. I mean, it really is horrifying. So I don't eat salmon anymore for a kickoff. But, I think I probably have to give myself a good talking to and come off the fish. But I do like vegetarian food. I do, and I love to cook it. And as you very well know, I love to make a soup.
The famous Charlie Dore's soup kitchen. I remember it so well. You could never envisage yourself sitting down and going yum, yum to a marvellous pork chop.
No, I couldn't. Not anymore.
Right.
But I wouldn't tell anyone else off for doing that.
No, you're not one of those people who sort of looks rather sadly at the plate of someone else's steak.
No, No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't do that because I know we all have, things that we do that other people disapprove of, but it depends on how good an actor they are as to whether you know.
Question 3, TV, film or books?
Well, I love to read. I love books. But my lifestyle of late has dictated that I've started so many and found myself going back to check what it was because I haven't had enough time to carry on reading. So the TV and film thing is more bite-sized, and I don't want to be a bite-sized person. I don't want to be quick, cut to the chase. But that's what it is at the moment. Although I do hope to allowing more time to read, because it's a lovely world, and it can be a film in your head anyway. I mean, no one can take that away. I mean, have you found that when you sometimes, when they make a version of a book into a film, that you thought, oh no, oh, so wrong, that's not how I cast it, or that's not
exactly, especially with the people you would say, oh my goodness, he's nothing like that.
Yeah.
He doesn't look anything like that in the book.
Yeah. Yes,
I know. TV and film, I mean, do you use TV and film as like a reward at the end of the day for having, got on with things, and you're sort of winding down?
Yes, definitely. We put the laptop on the kitchen table when we eat supper. Don't even sit, like sit soft, as Chris Wilde would say. We don't sit soft. We sit in our little hard chairs in the kitchen, and we eat our supper and we watch television. There's a lot to choose from, obviously, but yeah, it is like a little reward. Although, of course, I do go down rabbit holes, and I watch things online. When I'm supposed to be doing something else, I'll find something on YouTube and find that it's very, very important that I watch this little film about well, you name it.
Is there anything at television, particularly not film, that you would say, I must watch that, or I have to see that because I saw the first series, or the next episode of blah 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 is on?
Well, I love ridiculous comedy. Actually, just recently we've been revisiting Black Books. I don't know if did you see Black Books?
No.
Well, treat yourself. It is completely nuts. I do like comedies, but I'm very critical of comedy because actually a friend of mine said to me recently, if you advertise something as being funny and to a friend, and you say, we've got to watch this, it's so funny, and then they find it not funny, they're more cross than if you'd suggested to eat a certain kind of food or something else. You know what I mean?
Well, laughter, comedy and your funny bone is terribly subjective, isn't it?
Yes, it really is.
Utterly. It's like, it's one of those inexplicable things. Some things will not make you laugh at all, and everyone else is falling about, and you think they're mad.
Yes, it's like a little bit of falling in love. You know what I mean?
Yes,
it really is. It's so much, adjust to taste.
And laughing is such an important thing, especially it has been in the last year, if you've been able to do it. Question 4. Night owl or early riser?
I am a bit of an owl, but also I'm a bit of a lark as well. Certainly at the moment,
so you don't sleep much? Am I picking that up from you?
Yes, I wake too early. I wake too early because I have a hamster wheel of a brain, or I'm the hamster, and I can't remember a time when I didn't wake up with a big burst of cortisol and go, right, okay, what haven't I done? Now what do I need to do? Oh Christ, I haven't done that. Oh no, God, oh I better, and off it goes. And I can't remember the last time I didn't do that. And
it's not an anxious thing. It's just, right, okay, we're awake now.
No, it's full anxiety.
Oh, yes. Well, I've got that as well. Yes. Yeah. I wake up worrying about the dinner and I think, hang on, Barbara, why are you worried about the dinner? It's only 7:30. But yeah. So, and would you work at night? Would you work into the wee small hours?
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes I write things. I'm a great overwriter of emails, and I'll sometimes write a long eel. I'm writing a long eel, Barbara.
You're editing.
I'm keeping an eel. Actually, we do have one here in the country. We had to, no maintenance. Anyway, I'm writing a long email, is what my brain was thinking it was going to say.
Yeah.
I write a long email to somebody, and it's full of explanation, and I edit it, and I go through it, and I go, oh, that sounds a bit complicated. I'll cut that down. And then, no, it sounds a bit brief, sounds a bit sharp, sounds a bit bossy or something like that. I'll edit it down. Then I think, Oh, bollocks, I'll ring them in the morning.
Well, yeah, well, that's, and it's amazing that you have the cognitive capacity in after midnight, which is what you're suggesting you would do, to be able to do that at that time of the day, because by 10 o'clock, my brain has gone completely to a mashed banana.
How many hours sleep do you think you need?
Oh, well, I do need 7 hours sleep, but I sometimes would have 8. But I find that getting older, I don't need so much, but I do need sleep. I'm not good with not much less than that. I start hallucinating.
Yes, I wonder if I spend much of my day at the moment actually hallucinating.
Question 5, faith or fatalism?
Well, this is a really interesting one because I actually looked up fatalism,
Yes.
I know some people say, oh, it's fate, it's this sort of thing. I don't have a conventional faith, although I am an optimist. I'm an anxious optimist who fears the worst, if you see what I mean. I don't know how those things, maybe that's why I don't sleep, because I'm conflicted.
I think that's rather descriptive of many people. That's very well described.
So I looked up fatalism, and I found that it's very interesting. It says fatalist, it's a family of related philosophical doctrines that stress the subjugation of all events or actions to fate or destiny.
Yes. Yes.
Everything's fate or destiny. And, or Disney, fate or Disney. That's a good, you should have asked that actually.
Or Walt Disney, as we say in Scotland.
Disney. I won't go into those with you, Barbara.
Yes, so fatalism would mean not being that proactive, because one would imagine that things are going to happen anyway. Would anything direct your behavior? I mean, would you read a daily horoscope or anything like that?
No, I don't. I don't. No, I don't. But I, when people say it's fate, it was meant to be, I know that in certain cases, certain people are always going to react a certain way. It's just in their genes that's going to happen. They're going to react that way.
It's interesting, in Scotland, there is a really good saying, which is, what's for you will no go by you, which means what you're meant to get, you'll get. And I mean, it could apply in all sorts of other ways. That sounds rather acquisitive, but it's about, you'll get kind of what you deserve. Now, you could say, but that's total rubbish and it's nonsense and it stops you being proactive in any way. But the good thing about that is, if you wanted to go down that road, for example, if it was regarding a new house that you were trying to buy, or something you were going for in an auction, it would stop you trying to manipulate your mind into making something happen that you had no power over. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, it's certainly true to worry about things you have absolutely no control over.
Yes.
That is a wasted energy, isn't it? However, I do believe that you can change things. You can, and I suppose that's where the determinists would say, yes, that's because you were always going to change that thing.
Yes, yes.
Change things, so you can't really win with the fatalists or the determinists, I think.
Yep.
I mean, except that I think the best thing to do is to sort of skim the best bits off. And
also in faith, if what people are of faith, which is a totally opposite thing to that, but a lot of old Irish people used to say, offer it up. If it was a problem you were experiencing, whatever that is, offer it up. So in other words, other people would say, this is nonsense, absolute nonsense behavior. But actually what you do is cast the burden. You give it to someone else, and then it gives you the time, I suppose, to have a solution come at you from somewhere, whether it's on the wind, or it's from God, or it's from the man next door who's got a book about it.
Good to do that, yes.
Question 6, Facebook or the phone?
Well, I like talking to people, but I like writing too. So I would say probably phone, really, because I enjoy speaking to people. However, on Facebook, unless you have to be brief or too brief, so that people, with attention deficit disorder don't spool past your lovingly crafted post. I enjoy sort of making little posts and things like that, writing those. However, I do these days, online, it's impossible to be anywhere, I think, join anything, be part of anything without that message that comes up and says, because we care about your privacy, we now want to ask you 5,000 questions so that we can track you. If you once bought a garden hose, we're going to advertise garden hoses to you all year. And it's a bit like, trying to get hold of somebody and having a very bossy secretary go, can I ask what it's concerning, please? And you just go, no, I just want to ask him one question. No, could you please give these details? And it's so frustrating. And I can't be the only person. Of course, I know I'm not the only person, but who's just like closed down a window on the net, because I if I tick, I don't want you to know any of these things. Goodbye. Then you don't get into the site.
Now, would you use Facebook for your career and the phone for your private life?
Well, Facebook, it's a bit of a combination, although I'm quite good at keeping in touch with my friends. And I have made some friends for people who come to my gigs, and I feel like I know them and I have a relationship with them. Obviously, we don't go around each other's houses. I did join Facebook to advertise my gigs. So that's why I'm really on there. And the benefits are that, for instance, I have there's an old girls group from my old school, and that they all communicate on that. So that's nice in that way. And I do speak to people, exchange messages with some people who I've, got to know over the years on Facebook, which is nice. And I wouldn't have met them otherwise. And the connection thing is very good as well. But I probably wouldn't be on there. So that's an added bonus. But I probably wouldn't be on there if it wasn't. Or it's just a way of telling people what I'm doing.
Yes.
And the same with Twitter and and all the other things. But I'm more of by nature, I'm more of a phony. Don't quote that. I'm more phone.
Question 7. Shower or bath?
I like a bath, but I have a shower because it's quicker. My early memory of baths were, as a child, it was a fun thing. My mum used to bath me and my big brother Rowan, at the same time sometimes. And my Rowan always had this very unfair rule, which I didn't understand when I was about 2 or 3, which was last in, first out, because the deal was to stay in the bath as long as possible. And so that went on until I wised up. And when I went to boarding school, we were in this freezing Rothschild mansion. And we in the bathrooms, we had a bath rota. The thing was to be, and of course, being a rota, it rotated, you had them 3 times a week, whether you needed it or not, which was.
And also not pleasurable at all in a cold, unheated bathroom to be in even a hot bath. Half of you would be cold.
Yes, it was really, really freezing.
So you don't, Charlie, you wouldn't go and say, something, I've been gardening or I've been walking. I really need a lovely long soak in the bath and light a candle, stuff like that. A lot of people see the bath as a ritual.
Well, I do occasionally do that. Talking about sort of about good perfumes and so on and so forth. I love oils and I mix oils. I've got jars and jars and little tiny bottles everywhere. And I make mixtures and I put them in the basin and I just let them kind of percolate. And
that's lovely, isn't it? Really beautiful. Aromatherapy smells all over the place.
I love that. And so I would do that occasionally in a bath, but most of the time I'm going, God, I thought it was an hour earlier than it is, and so I'm leaping into the bath.
Question 8. Spring or autumn?
Definitely spring, I think. I always feel sorry in spring for the bees and the little plants that sort of bravely come out, and then suddenly, as usual in this country, there's suddenly an iceberg hits, and so that's the only thing I worry about in spring, in a kind of natural world way. I guess it's a way of weeding out the weak. That's the only thing I don't like about it. I've got, we're lucky out here. It just, you see everything in its gradual stages, and it's lovely. So yes, spring very definitely.
Do you get the profound? You're profoundly, you're a thinking person. What about the sort of slightly spiritual aspect of spring and autumn? The fact that that not just the changes physically in front of your eyes, but the passage of time and stuff. Does any of that kind of hit you?
Well, I'm always thinking about time moving on. Yes, moving on too fast, really. There is a feeling, a slightly sad feeling in a way sometimes, that, it's another year has gone by. And did I notice enough of the last one, sort of thing? I really envy people who can live in the moment, absolutely live in the moment, because then you get the full value of everything. Whereas if you're thinking about the past or the future, that puts a flavor on today. I want to live until I'm 130. I know this is possibly nothing to do with spring, but we are allowed to go off at tangents, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
I don't like the idea of time passing too quickly, because then that taps into my realization that I'm mortal.
Lots of people say, don't they? And it does seem to be when people are older, they say things like, another year has just whizzed by. Where did that year go? And it's just interesting. So you do sometimes get the sense that time is going faster or speeding up in some way.
Yes, I think also, if you do the same thing, because you just do the same thing, certain things are habitual. Some of them kind of meld into a great blur. And it's like you didn't get up and make a cup of tea every single day. It seems like, maybe 2 days, but it's 7. I do think it's important, talking of that, to break rituals. To habits, to do things, just sit in another part of the house, do something, or read something upside down. Or I don't mean hanging upside down. But, I try and do that sometimes. I try not to eat things that I usually like eating. I know this is nothing to do with spring, but it is in a way. It's like a kind of trying to rebirth your own time, if you see what I mean.
Yes, I do know that. I know exactly what you mean. Question 9, dine out or take out?
If it was an option of one of the two, I'd rather dine out, because if I was going to eat at home, or if I were going to eat at home, my English teacher would say, if I were going to eat at home, I would like to be cooking it or be cooked for. It doesn't matter where the place is, as long as the food is cooked by someone else. If I'm in a restaurant or whatever, it's nice to go out. It's like that. It's just kind of like a little. It's like a reward, I suppose, after a day of work. But we don't do it very much here at all. And also, when we had our dog Truman, who we took on late in his life as a rescue dog, he had separation issues. So even if you said to him, Truman, we're going out, we're only going locally. It'll be 2.5 hours. That's it. Okay, then we'll be back. As the minute you shut the door, he'd howl. And so we basically didn't go out for 3 years.
Oh dear.
We didn't go on holiday. We didn't, anyway. But that was the deal with him. That was the contract. But I like to eat out. It's a nice little refresher in your day, But I like to cook. I like to cook here.
Question 10, high heels or trainers?
I very rarely wear high heels. I've had a few accidents in high heels. I used to wear them all the time. In fact, I used to wear them so much when I lived in my flat in London, that when I took them off, and we're talking about the 80s now, when I took them off, I still walked on my tiptoes.
Yes, I know a lady who's in her 70s and wears great big high heels, and she says she can't wear flat shoes because her legs really hurt if she tries to put her heels onto the ground flat. Yeah. But would you wear slouchy clothes? We're talking about shoes here, but they're defining a look. Would you tend to get out of bed, and I'm not saying stage clothes, but you would tend to sort of dress for the day with and put decent shoes on, or would you just slouch around, mentioning pajamas and dressing gown?
Recently, I'm afraid, dressing gown. I'm a woman in a dressing gown. Recently, because I like to sort of try and get into stuff early, and I'm in my dressing gown, and then I keep thinking, okay, I'm going to go and have a shower and get dressed and everything now, and then the phone rings and something happens, and I'm in the postman, because I usually answer the door in my dressing gown, he doesn't even, he doesn't, there's no judgment there at all. He just expects me to be in my dressing gown.
Thanks for listening to Answer Me 10 with me, Barbara Dickson. This podcast was recorded in Edinburgh in 2021 and produced and edited by Lee Noble and John Eden.